international, and topping everything with the academic research perspective on international business by adjunct professor Mr. Petri Ahokangas. So we will be hearing experience-based insights from these highly experienced business executives and international sales researchers and business development strategists. To introduce our distinguished speakers, Dr. Petri Ahokangas, as you can see from the slides, I will not read all these through. Petri is a very experienced professor and specialized on several topics, and his special interest areas are including strategies and internationalization and digitalization. Mr. Paolo Dal Santo is leading the HP's education business for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And Paolo has a very wide experience and insights how the business within his territory and beyond that looks like at the moment, based on the challenges what we are facing because the COVID-19 crisis. And then last but absolutely not least, this is Miriam Bonilla, based in Madrid, Spain. And Miriam is the Chief Commercial Officer at Edibon International. And out from all the countries impacted on COVID-19, Spain is one of those European countries and one of those countries in the whole world that has suffered absolutely the most, which has meant also very unique challenges to develop and run the business in general. And then your host, which is myself. I am the founder and CEO of my own company, focusing mainly on two things. One is the internationalization in general, specifically on education segment. And at the same time, I am also one of the members at the Worlddidac Council. To start with and to give you some ideas regarding the social selling in general. This is one of those slides which I like and hate the most at the same time, because this is never ever updated. So if I will take this in the morning, it will be already out of date by noon. But this gives you a very good understanding when we are talking about social selling, what happens in 1 internet minute. And you can probably see that there's a lot. And if internet and the social media as such have changed our way of living and especially our way of doing business. But the question is how we can utilize and capitalize this technology on our behalf. Still a few words about social selling. Is that the key message what I have here is not about the old versus new, but the key message is the picture on the left, down left, is that a year from now you will wish you had started today. I am not saying that you are not utilizing social selling in your businesses, but in case you are not, this would be a very, very good day to start. So, and this is not about us, it's about them. And by them, I mean market, our customers, our partners, and so forth. To conclude, still one thing, because there are only very few business sectors that are absolutely international, and education is one of those. There is no country in the whole world that does not have education in a way or another. So therefore, this is good to keep in mind, that not only when it comes to your business and sales and strategy, but especially when it comes to social selling, please keep in mind the cultural differences. So you have to have your cultural awareness in your minds when you are approaching through social channels to your customers and partners. But then to go to our first panel discussion, I would like to go through and ask Petri, Paolo, and Miriam to tell their insights about these two questions. So what are your personal insights, and what have you experienced when it comes to conducting educational business during this COVID-19 era? And what have been the most important lessons that you have learned, and where do we have the room for improvement when moving forward in doing business? And if I may propose to go from left to right, so first Petri, then Paolo, and then Miriam. So if you would like to take over from here.
All right, thank you. I'm Petri Haukangas and coming from Oulu Business School, and I'm currently heading a research group on digital business, and I'm heavily involved in our executive MBA training and entrepreneurship training at the university, and also have been teaching international business. That is probably one of the most international subjects within the business schools. And I have also an industry background, so that is probably the background that gives me some perspective on this topic. I think that we can move on to the next slide that we have on the screen. So yes, so my standpoint, I was thinking of discussing three things: my standpoint to this topic, then the learning points and insights, and then finally the needs that we have found in our university organization. So what I'm doing is basically content sales in many ways. So we do online action research and education at the moment in what I call service or self-service mode. So it means different kind of platforms through which we provide videos or this kind of like this morning, I spent 5 hours already on lecturing on internationalization via Zoom, where we have an interaction with the students. Then what we do is facilitation of different kind of workshops and maybe sometimes consultancy to university internal customers, and then also outside customers, companies or other organizations, other educational institutions. So these are the activities that we do, and mainly from this practical point of view is content creation and delivery. So courses and exams online. Then what it is in practice is creative or co-creation workshops that are very important. So we need tools and platforms for that. Then there's quite often what we use virtual templates online that we fill in together as a co-creation or collect data through those. They facilitate learning processes. and sometimes also using learning games, also multiplayer online games for educational and research perspectives. And then the third kind of a job of university is the societal impact. And then the question is that how we do that in practice. So now that we have turned into this online mode of everything, this is my, I think, 7th week at home, visiting university occasionally, but not seeing anybody in person, neither my colleagues or students in different places. So what kind of things I see in the university. So even though the universities have been talking about the importance of online learning, both from the content perspective and from the pedagogical perspective, but when the COVID came, universities were unprepared to it. But the lucky thing was that the individuals were prepared. And I think that that is this kind of when we were turning to overnight transition to this remote work and online education, the lucky thing was that even if the university as such were lacking this kind of strategy or risk plan how to deal in that kind of situation, all universities, I think, turn into this kind of dependency on the individual teachers and educators who were left to solve the problems of their teaching and also research completely alone, which actually meant this kind of things like I've been using 7 different platforms for collaboration, from Slack to Zoom to WebEx to Teams and so on. And each of them have different kind of strengths and weaknesses that I had to learn myself. And I think that the same goes with everybody else. So the individual's capabilities vary a lot on this capability to start this kind of things. But then we also have the other side is that the students as such, I found that have been extremely flexible in adopting this kind of thing, even though they are not allowed to be at the university, but for example, quite actively follow the classes, online classes, quite often and actively participate in the platforms that we use, such as Moodle, to do the things that are required for the courses. So that's the good thing. But I think that this key learning point that universities have been continuing to do what they have been doing before, but what we have not seen is a development action. So developing something would call an ecosystem and a platform and a strategy at the university level, and then coordination of activities. And I think that we have been turning into survival mode from this kind of development action point of view. So I haven't seen this kind of development of new programs. I haven't seen this kind of a fast coordinated action to do and create some kind of things out of this situation. Like, would it be possible that universities have certain specific capabilities that we could spread to everybody? That is kind of a question that we have continued to do those things that are safe to do and not what are risky or new things. Then what I also see is that this pedagogical side of the universities has quite often been focused on this kind of skills and capabilities that are valid on a classroom, but that are not valid in the online education. So we can't just transform the traditional classroom education and lectures and the pedagogies that we use in this kind of work directly into what we can do online. So how do you plan and design course structures, for example, from the pedagogical point of view, so that you can actually deliver what you promise and then also have the impact that you want to have? So this kind of challenges I see there. And that's the kind of a mass lecturing problem also, because there are sometimes mass classes that have more students that we have used to do now. So our capacities from this resource perspective are not sufficient for many of the online things in practice if we want to do them in the same way that we have done it before. The funny thing from this learning point of view is that probably the executive education has been touched the least. And the reason being is that on executive education and selling that, we have been using the online tools like Facebook, websites, news, Twitter, LinkedIn, that kind of tools we've been using always to attract the managers to come into the courses. So we have just continued to do things the same way as before. And it will be very interesting to see, for example, at the end of the year that how do we get the students, the managers to join the classes, because of you have to pay for them, and it might be that the financial crisis that is following the COVID pandemic will probably have some kind of influence on the number of the students. But we have transformed, I think, most successfully the contents of the executive education to online, and also being able to continue to selling and contacting with the customers the same way as before. So what kind of needs we have at the universities for the educational technologies and the online education, what kind of things what is called from us as a university. So I see that these policies and procedures that we have at university level, they are lagging behind. And this improvisation that we have had at the individual level, at the course level, has led to inconsistent practices and a very slow support from the university side. So it means that we have to create this kind of procedures and processes to the IT departments, for example, of the universities, so that we can really provide support. And we have unified practices and policies so that we can do these things efficiently. Now they are just scattered efforts in this kind of survival mode. Then we have to pay attention to these unified tools and platforms, because this education as a service is not the business of universities. It is more about the content. So we need somebody to provide us the platform in such a way that universities can turn into this education as a service mode. Then again, another question is that these different students have different needs and different capabilities. So how do the students see this? We have no idea. So the universities, I think, need to research and find out that how the challenges of education are seen from the customer perspective, because we have only been focusing on our own problems and been trying to find ways how the students can cope with the challenges of the situation. And then I think that as you have starting and quoting the previous webinar, there's this new normal that is coming. So the question is that how and who are the universities and organizations that turn the capabilities that we have of this new normal to a competitive edge when selling to prospective students and potential customer, company customers that we have in our educational programs. Because I think that the universities need also to think of their customer attraction and acquisition of new students. As I see that due to the COVID, it might be seen as riskier as, or it can be seen riskier than before to go abroad to study. So
Petri,
maybe these are the kind of things.
Yes, thank you very, very much. And I am sure, I mean, there will be more questions. And actually, before handing the microphone over to Paolo, there is a very good question for you in the chat box from Brian Joyce. And so at the same time, we're listening Paolo's messaging. If you could take a look on that question, because I think that is a very good question. So please, Paolo, how do you see this topic in general? And then still Miriam, before we actually move to next phase and try to keep the time of 1 hour. Please go ahead, Paolo.
Perfect. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Very nice to be here today. And thank you also to Petri for the good hints. So I'm Paolo Dal Santo. I'm the HP education lead for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I want just to give you some hints, good, interesting feedback from Petri on higher education, university. I think the area where I'm covering this wider European landscape, and the focus is as well on university, but I want to probably look into more on the K-12, so primary schools. Just to do that very quickly, just a reminder of the HP or HP heritage. We've been founded in 1939 by two engineers, which actually founded our company on the Stanford campus. So within the core DNA of HP, there is education, there is higher education. And during all these years, today as well, HP is a leader in this market. And the positioning we always try to work on, we are a technology provider, but ultimately we are a connector between organizations, between nonprofit, between United Nations organization to work together. So that's at least to give you a good positioning why HP is focusing and where we are today. If you can switch to the next slide. So there were some good hints from Petri about the current situation. So I think I would define three blocks, three areas that we have seen from a global business. The first one is institutions were simply not ready. Beginning of March, middle of March, roughly 2 billion students in primary across the world were out of school or at home, not able to attend schools or virtual schools. The very interesting point is that this was not limited only to Western European or less developed countries. This is a global situation. All institutions were not ready. They didn't have the processes to cope with this. Call it something like a business continuity or a learning continuity plan. This was never considered a possibility. The second one was also training, was not simply the students and the access to the courses, but the teachers themselves at all levels in all countries from US to UK to Africa to Middle East. They were simply not trained because they were never forced somehow to look into that area and run their lessons and content. And then when somebody had some content there, all the technology infrastructure was or ecosystem was simply fragmented. And it doesn't matter if you use Windows ecosystem, Chrome, your own content provider, your own books, but there was no standard even within the schools. And we're not talking about brands. We're not talking of specific name within the PC or solution business. But really, we are talking about a normal and unified platform where all this interaction would take place. And last one is scaling. So standards. Petri mentioned the possibility to have a new definition of pedagogy on higher education, university, and K-12, so primary, but also standards. What do we mean when we think about learning as a service? We always limit ourselves just to the hardware, but then we discover, for example, connectivity is a big portion. It's a very interesting one. So the entering now of 5G, whatever the Internet of Things or gaming is going to be a big wave as well. The learning and the kind of universal access to education and learning via connectivity, that's another area. And we have seen countries which are really pushing forward in Middle East, in Central Europe, for example, or even in places where the traditional infrastructure is not there. There is no connectivity or broadband. Everything is now going to 5G, especially Africa. So ultimately, as a big company that are present across the world, we also realized and changed. This was already started before, but this pushed us as international company to really look how we differentiate our offer. Our mission or core values are clearly into education, but the way we have been acting and working in this emergency period, and also how we will look forward in, I would say, 6 or 12 months, because this is not going to end so quickly, is really in connecting people, connecting different geographies, connecting different experience, promote and support this local development and help where we can standardize, regardless the technology used, regardless the brand, regardless if it is a PC, if it is a tablet, if it is a phone, if it is even a printed book. HP has a strong printing business, of course, but this is the core mission and value that we see as a value connector, and be sure that we can actually leverage. Ultimately, of course, we are looking into to make sure that as a profit organization, we also can sell our solution and services, but this has been really shifted into a next and second priority. So the good learning and insight is this has pushed us as private big companies like HP to really open up and collaborate. We are offering today our tools, our connections, our content, even our hardware and solutions for no-profit or to organizations which are helping and using schools and even connecting schools. And this is probably the biggest insight for us, has been the learning. We've been learning a lot how teachers and students and institutions are working locally. So this is probably for us the biggest learning. And on the other hand is really how we open up this with local, with United Nations organizations, with Worlddidac, with others organizations as well, how we work together. So collaboration, I think this is probably the biggest insight on my side.
Thank you very much, Paolo. And I sincerely like the HP mission on the education, or HP in general, the connect, promote, and engage part, because that is, I mean, that is so perfectly in harmony with the social selling is as such, but especially with what I would call value economy. So making good things to happen, I mean, to individuals, to the planet in general, that will definitely, in the end of the day, lead us to good business. And anyway, business is needed, because what Petri was already mentioning, and what I personally very strongly believe in, the biggest driver actually to develop what we call the new normal is not going to be the COVID-19 or coronavirus. It will be the economic situation after we have kind of got familiar to kind of live with the corona, who will that will be here for quite a time still. So that means that the last part of the HP mission to sell is absolutely valid, because that would mean tax income to all the countries. Having said that, now it would be very interesting to hear how you, Miriam, and your people have managed in Spain throughout the whole year, and especially when not all the businesses are based on the cloud technology or software deliveries. And I think these two combined will be quite interesting. So please, Miriam, what are your thoughts and experiences?
Well, hello, everybody. Thanks so much for inviting me to this webinar today. If you ask me if we have any challenge during this crisis, we had a lot. There were many issues. It's true. Well, let me first introduce myself. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Edibon. We are based in Madrid, Spain. We produce equipment. We are a factory, a medium-sized factory. We produce units and equipment for the laboratories of the different technical schools, from high schools to colleges, universities. Our main customer, let's say, is the university, but we are a hardware producer, okay? So what happened with this crisis? What you have to be physically in your work. For us, you know, Spain has been one of the countries more rapidly affected by the virus. So we didn't have too much time to prepare. We went to bed one day, and the day after we have the virus here everywhere. So honestly has been a challenge for us to be able to cope with this situation. Personally, it's been difficult to keep life as normal as possible and to keep your children at home and try to combine work outside and inside. And professionally, we suffer many challenges. As a medium-sized factory, as I said to you, the worst day of many of our workers needed to come to work because we cannot work from home. We have to be here. We produce machines. So they come to work really with a fear in their bodies. So how we manage or what we suffer during these days, internally, first of all, trying to follow only official information. If you turn on the TV on those days, there were too much information. You turn on the cell phone, the Facebook, the Twitter, there were too much information everywhere. And you could not know which was the real information you can rely on. So what we did, we only listened to the government, to our government, what we should follow and what we should do during those days. Also, we needed to cope with the stress and the fear and the worries of our staff. At the end, we are human beings. We are companies, but we are composed by human beings. So they came here and they feel really fear. So to help them, we established some measures like no one from outside can go inside, nowhere allowed any meetings. We had to maintain the 2 meter social distance. We try to keep, at the end, many of our workers, they are parents, so we try to flexibilize as much as possible their schedules so they can come to the factory and they can stay at home because their children have no schools. So they need to concilize the family and work, okay? We stop all non-essential traveling. But as managers, the most important thing for us was to be a calming influence, not letting us be dominated by the fear, because we also had fear. Apart from that, the third problem, internal problem we had was logistics. Everything was stopped. We have goods stopped in the customs. We have goods stopped at the airports, no planes, no vessels. We were not able to deliver anything from here. It was difficult even to talk to our banks because some of the professionals were working from home, some others were fired. So it was really chaotic at those days. And also because this crisis, and it's the first time I've seen this after my 30 years experience, it's the first time I see a crisis that involves
Sorry, Miriam, we are losing you a little bit.
Country, from Canada to Australia. There were no country to only more than 150 countries we export, and all of them were suffering for this situation. So it was something unpredictable and difficult to handle. Also, and the fourth thing, internal problem we had was cash flow. Fortunately, we were a company with some good financial strength, but it's true that many companies will not survive to this situation because you will need to maintain all your expenses, mainly salaries, insurances, rent, anything you're paying, but you don't collect a single euro. So for medium-sized companies, we are not a multinational that can support any of these things. We are a medium-sized company or small companies. This situation is being really very critical. Okay, externally, it's a worldwide pandemic. As I said, we have no country to escape. Any single country you talk to, from Korea, Iraq, whatever, they were totally closed for the pandemic. Another important thing is that our customers were not available. Most of our customers, which are the universities, they were closed. They were open for the online courses, but they were closed. They had no time to look at the infrastructure or the facilities. They were not in the mood of buying equipment. So that was one of the main issues. The other third issue, external issue, is that this will affect, as you have said, for sure, in the future. The financial impact on governments, colleges, and universities will be really very big. It's true that many colleges are restricting their expenses to only essential expenditures. And many of the small institutions, they will need to close or merge because they will have not enough students to keep their future, okay? And also this will affect also governments. The financial effort that they have made to support health facilities, individual businesses, for sure will affect the amount of business they will be able to create for educational sector. The fourth issue is that all networking work was cancelled. No way to meet customers, dealers, representative, nothing. So we need to change the way to meet our customers and dealers. We had to start having many webinars and conferences and to at least keep on the business going, okay? What we learned, many things. First of all, communication became an essential skill with the dealers, with our customers, with the staff. We were communicating all the time. When we were at home for 2 weeks, we were confined for 2 weeks, I was all the time with the computer talking to my dealers, my customer, my staff, because it was the only way to motivate them and trying to keep everything alive. At that time, what we did, because we were not able to
Miriam,
come.
please, we need to move a little bit forward with the timing, but you will have a fair chance, I mean, to throughout the round 2. So please, could you kindly get back on this? We are just trying to keep the 1 hour time schedule here. So Sarah, if you could kindly hand the screen.
Okay, you hear me now?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to.
Okay, just I will put.
No, hang on, I will, yeah, sorry now. So if we will continue to round 2 and just, I mean, in a few seconds, a few of the kind of key messages regarding the, let's say, working in ecosystems within the educational business. And on the top left-hand side, the key message here is that the critical success factor, even before the COVID-19 had changed towards business collaboration, ecosystems, and the customer experience in general. And now when the COVID-19 hit all of us, that made it even a bigger mountain to climb. How shall we do this kind of in a virtual world as we move forward? And basically now as we within the Worlddidac see kind of our role and position to enable various things naturally to our members and affiliates, how to enable business development regardless of the COVID-19 situation. So what can we do to support the education business worldwide? So doing matchmaking, gathering people together to share their experiences and so forth, for example, through these kind of webinars, for example. So then the quick questions, or actually quick replies to our speakers regarding how you see the upcoming changes and future challenges, for example, towards the next autumn or years, let's say a couple of years to come. And how do you see, I mean, the social selling, these ecosystems, and what would this require from the sales force and the company management? And now, if you, Miriam, let's do it counterclockwise. So Miriam, Paolo, and Petri, if you could squeeze up your replies so that we would still have the time for your closing remarks and probably a few questions. So back to you, Miriam.
Okay. Well, one of the things that we've learned is that, well, you know, we have a technology that is, we are possible. We have the technology to control hardware from with the cloud. So as a hardware provider, we had to focus how we can help the universities to do that hands-on training. We have that technology so that they can do this hands-on training even remotely. That's the as part of for our customers, but for ourselves, we need to start to become more social. We need to improve our social media and start using the social selling as part of our way to sell. There is no, we cannot visit customers, so the only way is that to use the social selling like Facebook, LinkedIn, or ResearchGate to get to our customers. That means that we need to take a 180 organization. So, but also with the advantages of the space, time barriers disappear, flexibility, savings in time and in money, accessibility to our customers, and also that we can contact anyone around the world. Also, regarding the business ecosystem, networking has already changed. So the importance of alliances and associations like Worlddidac, it's becoming more and more important because we need to get to everybody anywhere, and also references and previous work, and it will be very much important. So in a summary, that will be how we expect the future. Okay, physical things, physical movement, it will be less and less, and everything will be done much more online. That's my idea to do it, to say it in a short way.
That was a very, very good summary, and I have to agree with you fully. And this is, and it's good to keep in mind that at least I'm in Finland, Spain, and a lot of other countries are, I mean, the infrastructure is rather good to cater all this, but within a lot of countries within the world, the IT infrastructure is not the same. And this will actually bring a completely new challenges how to make the ends meet in a way. So please, Paolo, you see businesses around the world, especially in the Europe, Middle East, Africa. How do you see this? What is required and what should we learn from you? Or what can we learn? Or
I
can we
think one
learn
of the
together?
it's the together. It's a good point, because that's exactly what we have came out. And in the sake of time, what we have seen that helping building these communities was a good point for Miriam about association or groups that have the same interest and community, non-profit organization, but also the concept, which is from Porter, which is the idea of a shared value. Shared value creation is a theory from Michael Porter around the 2010, and some company has really developed and work on them. Means that when you overlap what is the good for community and the activities you go there, it's also helping what are the good for business ultimately. If you make a simple example, if you help and train your local community with skills because you are near your factory, for example, or near your offices, the same community will actually improve their level of reading or math. They can be entrepreneur in the future. They would ultimately need maybe your equipment, your help, or be your workforce, or ultimately they might be your boss in your next company. So this idea of community, this is a key one, especially now, because the kind of issue facing is common. There is not anymore a division like, yeah, but Nordic countries or Finland, there's a different issue than France or Italy or Spain or South Africa. This is common by everyone. So the idea and the message that as a bigger company, and we have seen with others, responsible company like Microsoft or Google or Intel or others, it's really creating this open community and sharing together the learning, the technology, and the platforms there. So we have seen, and we are doing this openly. So the open offer to the community of Worlddidac and in general is really to work together. And whenever there is not a direct business opportunity, there is for sure a learning opportunity in this community. That's probably the key message that I would try to pass today. Building a joint community, business, non-profit, UN organizations. In this case, it's actually what it will work and support us for the future.
Thank you very much, Paolo. And I found myself repeating myself all over again. But this is about true, genuine collaboration. Petri, what is your point of view on this matter?
I think that I'm also going towards this kind of ecosystem and platform thinking, and I was collecting to the slide a couple of things that I see as the key point for understanding how platforms and ecosystem work, and what are the key points there, and what universities could think of doing so. Maybe universities really need to think of turning into or becoming online universities. What does it mean? There was a good question from Brian that what kind of research questions should we actually ask? And I was thinking that is how to create engaging and impactful online pedagogies and technologies is a good question towards that direction. And then how to kind of make the contents of education respond to changing needs that we have among the students and within the society and within the companies that are customers to, and how to kind of turn the online pedagogy to a competitive advantage at the universities. That kind of things are there. The universities need to think about the online brands as a part of that. And I think they also need to be more service oriented, have a service oriented architecture and processes for research and education, become more open and transparent. Think of the data and algorithms that are part of the modern platforms, and what is our data, what is our platform, algorithms that we have, and how do we make a bigger whole by looking at the complementarities across different internal contents that we have, and how do we collaborate at an international level so that we can really make this and create these economies of scale and scope from a completely new basis. So as Brian was asking that have we already reached a new normal, I think that this question already implies that yes, we are there. So the question is that we need to figure out new opportunities and bring about and create new business around those opportunities that we have now seen to emerge, rather than just trying to stick to the old ways.
Thank you, Petri, very much. And regarding these platforms, or what I call this business platform economy, so it's really kind of a co-collaborate kind of a thing in a way. And I truly believe that, I mean, enabling ecosystem of ecosystems to collaborate with each other towards the same goal and target. In a way, I think there is something, and we anyway need to do this in a very kind of economic way. So not to invent the wheel, I mean, all over again in all countries. So trying to, or not trying, but to moving forward to, hang on, still trying to move forward my screen. Sorry, hang on, I need to find. Here, now you probably can see it. To kind of conclude, and it's always so nice to bring Charles Darwin on these discussions. And this is really the evolution kind of a theory where what we are facing at the moment. And as Mr. Darwin said quite a while ago, is not really the strongest of the species that survives, but it is really the most intelligent. And how are we able to adapt to this change and the challenges? And here, these kind of things like the social selling as a tool, and let's say the kind of a mode of operation to collaborate with each other towards the same target could be one of the ways to kind of improve how we are working in general and how we are developing the educational business. And then the final round before closing, and if you would have kind of a 1 minute pitch, in a way, one sentence, what would be your number one concern or absolutely the most important lesson that you have learned, or what kind of one advice you could give to audience regarding the new normal and the coming autumn 2020. So maybe we start now with Petri, and then Paolo, and then Miriam, and then we are quite good in time to have the closing of the session. So please, Petri, what would be your one-liner towards autumn 2020?
I think that we should everybody be more opportunity driven rather than this kind of risk averse at this point. Now we are changing the world. It's coming into a new state in a way, and we don't know about that, how it's going. So where's the opportunity? Maybe that's where we should go.
Paolo.
So the current situation is not a transition. That's also the other clear message we are getting. This has changed and accelerated everything from remote learning, from classroom attendance to executive education so fast. So there is not going to be a return to normal in 3 or 6 months. So this is a 1 or 2 year journey. And so the areas where we really need to consider is this is not temporary and we need to change. Ultimately, big company, small company, this is a reality. And the second one is we'll push more, or we need more collectively to share more experience and example. I got good insight today from a university setup and as well a small to mid-sized company like the one from Miriam. And this is an exchange of information and chat. So I think this collective forum or webinars or open end organization will really help. So situation is not short term. We need to look into the future, how this will impact us and continues to impact us. And second is really on creating a virtual community between private, public, university, and small companies. That's the going forward that we do see, and HP is more than welcome to support this in Worlddidac and in others as well.
Yeah, sorry, I did some things that I should not have done. But basically, this kind of ends our meeting, and all those questions that you have written on the chat. As said, we will be gathering those and go through and write replies and also send those to you or put those on our LinkedIn website or somewhere. I would like to thank both our team in Worlddidac HQ and especially our very distinguished experts, Miriam, Paolo, and Petra, for sharing their experience and insights about the topic of social selling and business ecosystem during the COVID-19. The last one, what I would like to say is that as per today, we have not yet planned our next webinar, but please do stay tuned and follow our social media channels, because we will be getting back on these webinars. And at the moment, we are evaluating different kind of options about the themes and how we would do that. How could we do this, for example, with our affiliates around the world, and these kind of things, and specific topics and themes for these webinars. So absolutely, please feel absolutely free to get back to us with any ideas and thoughts and wishes that you may have. What kind of a common themes we could have for these kind of 1 hour webinars that we could moderate. Once again, thank you very much. This ends the webinar, and we will be in touch with you through social media, of course. Thank you very much, each and everyone. And bye just for now.
Thank you. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.